أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم. When Sayyiduna Uthman radiallahu ta'ala an, he migrated to Medina to Munawwara. As you know, the Muslims in Medina, they had a lot of hardship. There was a lot of difficulty. Many Muslims had migrated from Mecca to Medina. They had nothing in terms of property, in terms of wealth. And so, on many occasions, the Prophet ﷺ would encourage the Muslims to donate, to share something of their wealth for the betterment in the hereafter. That they make sacrifice in this world, but they benefit on the Day of Judgment. And whenever Rasulullah ﷺ, जब भी Rasulullah ﷺ ने अर्ज़ किया कि आप जो है ताउन करें, then one of those individuals that you would see rushing forward would be Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. On many occasions, he would donate in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, when the masjid became small for the Muslims, when they moved to Medina to Munawwara, they established Masjid Nabwi. The land was purchased by Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala. But then the masjid, obviously, as the Muslim community grew, it became necessary for them to expand. And so Sayyidina Uthman, he paid 20,000 dirhams, 20,000 dirham, silver coins. And he purchased land in order to expand the masjid. Meaning even today, those people who are praying namaz, who are sitting and reciting Quran and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Masjid Nabwi, that reward, it will be written in the sahifa, in the scroll of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. आप जब Masjid Nabwi जाते हैं तो आपको मालूम है that on one side is Jannatul Baqi, which is where Muslims are buried. Anyone who has had the good fortune for going for Umrah, for going for Hajj and visiting Medina to Munawwara, आपको मालूम है ये मुसलमान का जो कब्रिस्तान है. लेकिन किसने ये ज़मीन खरीदी? Who was the one who purchased this land for Muslims to be buried? The likes of Imam Hassan, Sayyidah Fatima, the likes of Sayyidina Uthman himself, many great companions all buried in this land. It was Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. He was the one who purchased the land for the benefit of the Muslims, and then it was made into a graveyard. And उस ज़माने में जैसे कि आपको मालूम है, they used to have slaves. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would encourage the believers to free slaves. Now exactly how many slaves Sayyidina Uthman he freed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala बेहतर जाने. क्योंकि वो फरमाते हैं कि जब भी जुम्मा का दिन आता, whenever the day of Friday would come, I would free one slave for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. कभी कभी ऐसा होता कि I would not be able to find a slave to free. Or maybe I didn't have the finances, maybe I wasn't able to free the slave. So what he would do qaza of it. So the next Friday he would free 2 slaves. एक वक्त ऐसा हुआ, Rasulullah was in the masjid and he had dawat at the house of Sayyidina Uthman. So Rasulullah was going towards the house of Sayyidina Uthman. Sayyidina Uthman is walking behind and he's concentrating and he's moving his lips. And Rasulullah he says, Uthman, kya baat hai? What are you doing? Like you're walking behind me and you're muttering something. And he said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, what I am doing is I am counting the number of steps it takes for you to walk from the masjid to my house, because I have made intention that the same number of slaves, inshaAllah, I will free for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we will see, when the people in his khilafah, they will gather outside of his house in order to martyr him. Shaheed karne ke liye, jab wo log Sayyidina Usman ke ghar ke samne wo khare honge, these people will come back. All of these people he freed, they will come back and they say that we are ready to fight for you. We are ready to stand for you. And they say that just these individuals, they were a full army in themselves. Sayyidina Uthman, we will see what his patience is like then. And there's one narration And there's countless narrations. I'm only going to mention a few of them today. Otherwise, this entire series could be dedicated to the generosity of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. And एक ऐसा आदमी था जो मुनाफिक था, लेकिन उसका जो निफाक था, his hypocrisy was not apparent. He pretended to be a Muslim. And he had a tree which was leaning over, and the fruit of that tree would fall into his neighbor's house. वो sahabi Rasul थे. And the companion, he mentioned to the Prophet ﷺ कि ये है मसला कि ये जो मेरा जो पड़ोसी है, उनकी जो दरख्त के जो फल है वो, they keep falling onto my side. Now it becomes a problem for whatever reason. Maybe the children were going and picking them up, whatever the situation was. So Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he encourages this man. Jo munafiq tha, lekin people did not know. He encourages this man that, oh person, why don't you sell this tree to your neighbor? To usne mana kar diya. He says, sell this tree to your neighbor, Allah will give you a tree in Jannah. This person, he refused. So now what happens? Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala, and he goes to this individual and he says to him that, sell me this tree. And he pays a very hefty price for this. And then he goes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he says, Ya Rasulullah, that tree which you wanted, which you wished for, that it should belong to your companion, I have purchased it and I have given it to him. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at that time had promised him again a tree in Jannah. And you don't get promises of trees in Jannah if you're not going to go to Jannah, right? Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala, and he wasn't just a generous person, he was also a person whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed with bravery. How do we know this? How do we know he had the quality of shaja'ah? Because every single battle that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam participated, then next to him was Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. He participated in every battle that the Prophet ﷺ participated, with the exception of one battle. सिर्फ वो एक जंग है जिसमें Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala an sharik nahi हुए थे, but it wasn't his own doing. You know the battle of Badr, it was such an important battle that Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam फरमाते हैं कि हम में से वो फरिश्ते जिन्होंने बदर में शिरकत फरमाई, amongst the angels, those angels who participated in the battle of Badr, their maqam, their station is higher than the other angels. And you know, even amongst the companions, Sahaba Kiram jo hai, unme se wo log jinhone Badr mein wo jo sharik hue, who participated in the battle of Badr, they have a very high station. Now when the companions, they were going, Sayyidina Uthman, wo bhi tayyar ho gaye jihad mein sharik hone ke liye. But what happened? His wife, Sayyidah Ruqayya, the daughter of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she was extremely unwell. She was extremely unwell. Now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to Uthman, you stay behind. You don't participate in the battle. You take care of your wife. You take care of my daughter. You can imagine now this must be very difficult for Sayyidina Uthman. But what is it in reality when the companions, they participate in jihad? What are they doing? They are listening to Allah and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if they listen to Allah and His Rasul and they join the jihad, and here Sayyidina Uthman is listening to Allah and His Rasul and he's staying at home and taking care of his wife, in reality they're doing the same thing. And for this reason, later Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala an, not only is his name included in those who participated in Badr, but rather the Prophet ﷺ promised him that on the Day of Judgment, when those companions are raised in the Zumrah, in the group of those who fought in Badr, you will be raised amongst that group as well. Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala an, he was taking care of his wife. And as Sayyidina Zayd bin Haritha returned back to Madinatul Munawwara, and he informed the people of the good news that the Muslims had been victorious, at the same time, Sayyidina Uthman had just prayed the janazah namaz of his wife, Sayyidah Ruqayya, and they were lowering her into the grave. So it was a day of happiness, but it was a day of sadness as well. And Sayyidina Rasulullah, he went to the grave of Sayyidah Ruqayya and he prayed for her. And they mentioned after this, Sayyidina Uthman, something changed within him. He was very upset. He was very sad. You can appreciate this. And he's not only lost his wife, there was something else. And even when Rasulullah went to him and said, oh Uthman, you know, we see you very sad. What is the situation? Why is it that you are so sad? And Rasulullah knew, but he wanted Sayyidina Uthman to say it because of what would happen later. Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala, and he says, Ya Rasulullah, यानी आपको मालूम है that my wife has passed away, लेकिन सिर्फ ये बात नहीं है. My wife has passed away, and it's also mentioned shortly after this, the son that he had with Sayyidah Ruqayya, Abdullah, he at the age of 6 had also passed away. So you can imagine the grief he's going through. And he says, Ya Rasulullah, it's two things. It's my son has passed away, my wife has passed away, but there's a second thing, my connection to you. Because in the hadith it mentions on the day of judgment, every relationship will be cut off. जो भी रिश्तेदारी है, नाता है, सब कुछ वो मक़तू हो गया. Everything will be cut off, but the relationship with the Prophet ﷺ will come to use even on the day of judgment. So he says, Ya Rasulullah, my relationship with you has been cut off. At that time, Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam, he descended from the heavens. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hukum farmata hai कि आपकी जो दूसरी बेटी है Kulthum, her nikah should be done with Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. Now we need to pause for a moment. This, you've just heard it and you think that's fine. No. How many prophets existed from the time of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam till Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam? 124,000, 224,000. Allah knows best how many thousands of prophets existed and how many of them had daughters. But not a single prophet gave two daughters into the marriage of any single individual. No prophet gave their two daughters into the marriage of one individual, except for Sayyidina Uthman, and that too, not any prophet, the greatest of all prophets, alayhimu salatu wa taslim. They gave two of their daughters into the marriage of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala, and this will never be achieved by any individual because there are no prophets now. The door of prophethood has been closed. So Sayyidina Uthman was married to Sayyidah Ruqayya and he was married to Sayyidah Kulthum. Sayyidah Kulthum would also pass away in the year 9 AH. But because of him marrying these two daughters, he was known as Dhun Nurayn, the possessor of two lights. And the ulama, they mention that if he is Dhun Nurayn, because he married two daughters of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then what about those people who object to the Nuraniya, the Nur of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Yeah, he marries two daughters and he's called Dhun Nurayn. Then how can you object to the one whom is the father of these two individuals? This is why Sayyidi Al-Hazri says, Noor ki sarkar se paya do shala noor ka. Noor ki sarkar se paya do shala noor ka. Ho mubarak tumko Dhun Nurayn jora noor ka. Tere nasle paak mein hai bachcha bachcha noor ka. Tu hai aine noor tera sab gharana noor ka. This is an amazing individual. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He blessed him in this manner which no one has been blessed before, no one will be blessed again after. That he was given in marriage two daughters of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is why, our Imam Azam Abu Hanifa, he's an amazing individual. Imam Azam Abu Hanifa ke door mein ek aisa banda tha, wo kehta tha ki wo Musalman hai. He used to claim to be a Muslim. Lekin he used to go around and say that, Sayyidina Uthman, he was a Jew, कि वो यहूदी था. These are the type of people that had enmity towards Sayyidina Uthman, unfortunately. So Imam Azam Abu Hanifa, he decided to go and teach him something. So he went to him and he said to him कि मैंने सुना है कि आपकी एक बेटी है, that you have a daughter who is marriage age. तो I have come with a marriage proposal. And the person says, Imam, you are such a great individual. Whichever proposal you bring must be a very amazing proposal. And he goes, yes. He goes, this person, he's extremely modest. He's extremely God-fearing. He's a hafiz of the Quran. And he recites the Quran constantly. He's one of the best men in our community and society. This man, he says, no more. Just, go ahead, fix the relationship. And I'm happy for my daughter to be married to such a great individual. But he says, Imam Sahib says, just 1 second. There's one more thing. The person is a Jewish person. Yani wo Yahudi hai. This man, he says, Imam Sahib, kaisi baat aap lekar aaye hai? What type of thing are you saying to me? You are an Imam, such a great individual. You know that we can't marry, a daughter can't marry a person who is a Yahud. And then the Imam says to him that you are not letting your daughter marry a Jewish person, but you believe that he who is Sayyidul Anbiya, the greatest of all prophets, that individual, he not married just one daughter, but two daughters to a Jewish man. तो फिर ये जो आदमी है उन्होंने तौबा की, he did tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he sought forgiveness and he stopped saying these types of things. But this is just to make you understand the type of people who make rumors about Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. Imam Azam Abu Hanifa was that great individual because people were confused who was the first person to accept Islam. Some said it was Sayyidina Khadija, some said it was Sayyidina Ali, some said it was Sayyidina Zayd bin Haritha, some said it was Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. Imam Azam Abu Hanifa was the first one to reconcile all of these matters and make it easy for them. What did he say? He said the first woman to accept Islam was Sayyidina Khadija. The first man to accept Islam, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq. And the first slave to accept Islam was Sayyidina Zayd bin Haritha radiallahu ta'ala. And the first child, Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajhahu al-kareem. And in this way, all of these matters are settled. By the way, in terms of ordering of number, the first person, Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala, and what's his number in accepting Islam? He was the fourth man to accept Islam. Before him was Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Ali, and Sayyidina Zayd bin Haritha radiallahu ta'ala. And from all of the Muslims, he was the fifth because Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha had also accepted Islam. Sayyidina Uthman's participation in the battles, it wasn't just physically, even financially. He used to contribute in a huge way. You must know about the Battle of Tabuk, which is known as Jaysh Usra, the army of difficulty. Why is it known as the army of difficulty? Because in those times, at that particular time, the Muslims were going through a drought. There was extreme hardship. It was a time to harvest the fruits. They had to travel a huge distance. People were coming to the Prophet ﷺ and saying that we want to participate in the battle, and they were returning back with tears in their eyes. They were upset, they were crying. Why? Because they didn't have the weaponry to participate. They didn't have the camels to participate. They didn't have the horses. They didn't have shields. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he's encouraging the people, donate so people can fight in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the Battle of Tabuk. What did Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq give? In the Battle of Tabuk, he gave all of his wealth towards this battle for the sake of Allah. Sayyidina Umar gave half of his wealth. Sayyidina Abdul Rahman ibn Auf gave thousands in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then came the turn of Sayyidina Uthman. And he stands up and he says, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as Rasulullah is encouraging the people to give in the way of Allah, Sayyidina Uthman, he stands up and he says, Ya Rasulullah, from me, 100 camels, saman ke saath, with their provisions in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 100 camels, try and understand. In our times, if you just argue, one camel is 1,000 pounds, which is more than that. With the provisions, will be easily more than that. Sayyidina Uthman stands up and he says, 100 camels in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the Prophet stands up, he says that it's a long journey, there's a lot of mujahids, there's a lot of warriors, we need more people to donate. Sayyidina Uthman, he stands up, he says 200 camels in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, Prophet stands up, he says, there's a lot of soldiers. We need to go a long way. Sayyidina Uthman, he stands up, he says 300 camels in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the ulama, like Sheikh Ahmad Yar Khan Naimi, they say that, this wasn't 300 camels. No, each time Sayyidina Uthman, he stood up, he was reconfirming. So it was 300 plus 200 plus 100, in total 600 camels. When Sayyidina Uthman goes back home and he separates the 600 camels from the livestock, he looks at the number and he thinks this is a bit short. So he says to his servants, he says, is there any more camels? They say, add another 100 camels. So he gets up to 700 camels. He says, do you have any more camels? He says, yeah, we have some more. He says, add another. He says, 800 camels. Then he does this and he says, can we not get to 1,000? Hazar ho jaye to kitna acha ho. I come in front of Prophet ﷺ with 1,000 camels. And they say, Ya Uthman, we don't have 1,000 camels. He says, how many do you have? He says, we have 940 camels. So he says, is there no way to make 1,000? He goes, how many horses do we have? Can we not find 60 horses from somewhere? And so he comes in front of Prophet ﷺ, 940 camels and 60 horses. And in his sleeves he has 1,000 dinar. 1,000 dinars. Each 1 dinar is a mithqal of gold, 4.5 grams of gold. A gram of gold is about 50 pounds. You can do the calculation yourself. How many thousands of pounds this equates to. And when he comes with the gold coins and the camels, the Prophet ﷺ doesn't say place it anywhere. The Prophet ﷺ, he extends his garment and he says, oh Uthman, place the coins here. And he extends his garment, he says, place the coins here. And then Sayyidina Uthman, he places the coins into the lap of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he takes the coins and he's placing them into one hand, and from one hand he's placing them into the other hand, and he says that whatever Uthman does after today, it will not harm him. And he was promising Sayyidina Uthman Jannah at that point. And the scholars, they mention that Rasulullah sallallahu, he looked to the heavens and he said, Allahumma la tas'al an Uthman ba'da hadha al-yawm. Do not ask anything from Uthman after this day. Rasulullah is saying that whatever Uthman does from this point forward, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will not ask anything from him. On one occasion, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala, and he came to Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and he said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, हमारी उम्मत में से वो कौन है जो पहला जन्नत में दाखिल होगा बिला हिसाब व किताब? Without any questioning, he will enter into Jannah. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidina Ali asked was, who will be the first person whose account will be taken place? जिसका पहला हिसाब व किताब होगा. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said the first person whose account will take place will be Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala. From the ummah, the first person his account will take place will be Abu Bakr Siddiq, and obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, someone like Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, his account will not be like mine and your accounts. But he said he will be first. He says, who will be number two? He said it will be Umar. He says, that's fine. He says, who will be number three? And so the hadith mentions that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he began to smile. वो मुस्कुराने लगे. और कहा, number three will be you or Ali. So Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala, and he said, Abu Bakr, then Umar, then after Umar it should have been Uthman. How come I have come into the third position? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Uthman, he's not in this line. Why? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, oh Allah, my Uthman, he's so modest, he has so much haya, he has so much shame, that on the day of judgment, if you start asking him questions, maybe the situation will become difficult for him. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Sayyidina Uthman should enter into Jannah without any hisab wa kitab. इसीलिए उलमा फरमाते हैं वो पहला शख्स हमारी उम्मत में से जो जन्नत में दाखिल होगा बिला हिसाब व किताब, it will be none other than Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. I'm bringing my discussion inshallah to a close. It would be improper if I finish my discussion without mentioning the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, because this was such an important and pivotal point in Muslim history. And within this incident, right at the center, there's an individual, and it is Sayyidina Uthman. What happens the 6th year after Hijrah? The Muslims, they have been away from Makkah al-Mukarramah for 6 years. No Umrah, no Hajj, no Tawaf, no Sa'i. Prophet ﷺ sees a dream. The Muslims are performing Umrah. 1400 companions वो तैयार हो जाते हैं Umrah करने के लिए. कुफार मक्का वो आते हैं कहते हैं कि no Umrah for you. Stop them at Hudaybiyah. Now negotiations need to take place. Prophet ﷺ needs to select one person from his companions. 1400 people are present. Who's going to be the representative of the Prophet ﷺ is Sayyidina Uthman. A very dangerous mission. As soon as he enters into Makkah al-Mukarramah, almost immediately they kill him. They surround him. But luckily, we mentioned Sayyidina Uthman was very beloved to the Quraysh. So one of the people, he says, he's under my protection. Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala, the negotiations begin. And during the negotiations, the kuffar in Makkah, they say to Uthman that, the Kaaba is here, agar aapko tawaf karna hai, to aap tawaf kar le. An individual who spent his entire life in Makkah al-Mukarramah, subh sham, jab bhi wo chahe wo tawaf kar sakte hai. For 6 years, he's been deprived of doing tawaf. Or sirf itni baat nahi hai, he's in the state of ihram. Umrah is wajib upon him. If he does not do Umrah this year, he's going to have to do qaza. The Kaaba is in front, he's been given permission. Agar wo chahe to, he could have just gone around the Kaaba. Who is going to say anything to him? But look at the aqeedah of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. Those people who say, you Sunnis, you take things too far. Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala, he says, by Allah, I will not do tawaf of the Kaaba until my Prophet has not done tawaf of the Kaaba. And when a rumor spread to the camp of the Muslims that Uthman is doing tawaf of the Kaaba, Rasulullah himself said that no, my Uthman, he would not do tawaf before I have not done tawaf. Even the Prophet ﷺ knew that Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala, and he's not like this, he's not an individual like this. Aapko maloom hai what happened after this. Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala, and the negotiations, they got delayed. A rumor spread that he had been martyred. Rasulullah ﷺ took the pledge of allegiance. When they took the pledge of allegiance, Sayyidina Uthman was absent. So Rasulullah ﷺ took his own hand and he pledged allegiance on behalf of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. He said, this is the hand of Uthman. And I pledge allegiance on his behalf because he is in the way of Allah and his Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Some people, when they began to have hatred towards Sayyidina Uthman, they raised these objections. Or kuch log aise i'tiraz karte hai. One Egyptian, he came to Sayyidina Abdullah bin Umar at the time of Hajj और कहा कि आपको मालूम है कि उस्मान जो है वो बदर में शरीक नहीं हुए. He was from those people in Uhud who fled from the battlefield. And he was not part of Baytul Ridwan. He wasn't part of the Pledge of Allegiance in the time of Hudaybiyah. And Sayyidina Abdullah bin Umar, each time he asked, he said, yes, you're right. What you have said is true. There's nothing wrong with what you have said. But he says, come close now and let me make you understand. He says that Sayyidina Uthman did not participate in Badr, but that's because he was following the command of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and taking care of his daughter, Sayyidah Ruqayyah. In Uhud, yes, he left from the battlefield, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the Quran Kareem that those who left the battlefield, all of them are forgiven. So now anyone who raises an objection is raising an objection against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number 3, he wasn't part of Baytul Ridwan. Why? Because he was representing Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Makkatul Mukarramah. This is why he was unable to participate. Yes. So this is Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. And there's so much we can discuss about his modesty, his taqwa, his worship. All of these things, insha'Allah ta'ala, they will come in their own place, in their own time, insha'Allah ta'ala. Just one thing to finish with, in regards to Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. Just one thing, because it was on the generosity, I'll add one more story and we will finish. It's mentioned कि एक वक्त ऐसा हुआ कि एक फकीर Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam के दरवाजे पर वो उसने दस्तखत दी, he knocked, and he said, if there's anything you can give ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, go to the house of Uthman. Uthman ke ghar pe chale jaye, and you'll find something there. When this poor man, he got to the door of Sayyidina Uthman, inside he heard a discussion. Uthman was telling the servant, जो गुलाम था उसको, वो कह रहे थे कि कल रात को, in the lamp, you use too much oil. यानी ज़्यादा तेल आपने इस्तेमाल किया. तो फकीर सोचता है कि that person who's arguing about oil, a little bit of oil in the lamp, what's he going to give to me? वो क्या देगा मुझको? So वो चलने लगा, he started going backwards. Then he thought, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, so I should at least try. So he knocked on the door and he says, Sayyidina Uthman, he came out, he says, क्या बात है? He says, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told me to come to your house. I'm a poor person, I have nothing. So Uthman says, who sent you? He says, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, that's fine. He went back into the house and he took 3 bags and then he gave them to this individual. This person, he takes the bags, he's walking home and he thinks, I should at least look what's inside. And when he looks inside, what's there? In each bag there's 1,000 gold coins. In each bag there's 1,000 gold coins. And this person, he's shocked. He thinks to himself, okay, if he just gave me 2 dirhams, ye bhi kafi tha. Why is he giving me 3,000 gold coins? So he turns back, he goes back to the house and he knocks on the door and he says, I don't understand. You were arguing with your servant because he used a little bit of extra oil. And here, when I asked you, you gave me 3,000 gold coins. And he says, no, you didn't understand. He goes, when it comes to the matter of the oil, that's my thing. I have to answer for that. This is to do with myself. But when you came to my door, who had sent you was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How can it be that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sends somebody to my door and that person returns empty-handed? This is just an example of the generosity of our master, Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. And we pause here for today, inshaAllah. We will continue next weekend, inshaAllah, where we will discuss the Khilafah and the martyrdom of Sayyidina Uthman. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May He forgive us for our major and minor sins. Give us the ability to follow in the footsteps of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala an. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us in this world and in the hereafter. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een bi rahmatika ya arhamar